In New York, at the 1930 World's Fair, a record highlights the scene that captured attention. A Hopi woman, in ritual attire and with traditional side rolls in her hair, presents her twin babies. In the space dedicated to indigenous peoples, motherhood and dress emerge as a window into Hopi daily life and identity. In the late 19th century, at the 𝗢𝗻𝗱 Reservation, Oregon, Rattlesnake Pete gained fame. Among Cayuse, 𝗢𝗻𝗱, and Walla Walla, life revolved around bargains and pressures, federal laws, missionaries, markets. Rituals endured even when the agency imposed schools and fences, shrinking the land and reshaping daily life. In 1885, Ben Whittick photographed Sergeant Jim, a White Mountain Apache scout. The record highlights the role of scouts in the Army's campaigns in the Southwest. They guided and negotiated routes between troops and villages. Subscribe to our channel and send the video to someone who loves the Old West. Your support motivates us to keep making videos. Around 1900 in New Mexico, native women from various peoples sustained livelihoods in markets by selling pots. From clay in their hands to the shine of polishing, they painted and fired in open flames, inherited techniques. The pieces served the kitchen and trade also as currency, weaving local networks and ties with settlers. In the 1930s in New Mexico, a Navajo equestrian game took center stage in the open landscape. Riders advanced and retreated in agile contests. The horse was symbolic currency and sustenance. Around them, families gathered, renewed alliances, and transmitted handling techniques, marking the rhythm of the festive calendar. In the early years of the 20th century, Geronimo Chiricahua Apache leader lived as a prisoner of war at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, since the 1886 surrender. Even so, his path in the campaigns against U.S. and Mexican forces kept shaping his image, making him a symbol of indigenous resistance and battlefield command. In 1925 in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the Feast, a musical gathering, took place which, according to local records, featured a singer of Cherokee origin. Her program combined traditional songs and then recent works. The event brought indigenous communities and the urban public together, establishing the feast as an annual cultural rite. In 1900, at the start of the century, photographer Carl Wertens, known for portraying North American indigenous peoples, recorded the daughter of Chief 𝗢𝗚𝗍, White River Apache leader in Arizona. In the image, clothing, posture, and adornments confirm the family's lineage and place in the village's social order at that time. In 1890 in Montana, the record of Eddie Gray, son of White Elk and a voice among the Northern Cheyenne, emerges as a marker of continuity. His name connects lineages and rituals. At the same time, the Dawes Act and federal assimilation compressed lands and customs, while Western expansion pushed the frontier over their territories. In 1899, F.A. Reinhardt photographed Good Eagle, Wanbli Waste in 𝗀𝗡, a member of the Oglala Lakota. The portrait is part of an effort to record the Plains peoples at the end of the 19th century, when the U.S. government tightened control in the West and highlights the place of his sub-tribe among the 7 of the Lakota. Joseph White Bull, Dakota warrior and nephew of Sitting Bull, was born around 1849. In 1876, at the Battle of Little Bighorn in Montana, he claimed to have brought down Colonel George Custer, a version echoed in Sioux tradition. Later, he lived on reservations. He died in 1947 at the age of 98, holding memories of a turbulent century. Chief Two Sticks, also called 𝗀𝗚𝗱 𝗀𝗻𝗱, was a Lakota leader on the Great Plains. He was part of the 𝗀𝗡𝗍, the Sioux Confederation of Collective Leadership, participating in diplomatic and military decisions. He earned the name 𝗏𝗏𝗀, knocks down two, when facing the UTEs and bringing down 2 horses with a single war club blow. Last Horse, Oglala Lakota leader, roamed the plains of the western United States at the end of the 19th century. After years of clashes with colonial expansion, he surrendered his weapons in 1899, among the last. Taken to a reservation, he lived under confinement and died in 1909. His trajectory marked the decline of the Plains Wars. A photograph shows a Cherokee woman holding a baby in her arms, likely her son. The record takes place in Oklahoma, the destination of many peoples removed after the 19th century. Produced in the 1920s, the image cuts across federal assimilation policies and exposes changes in ways of life and community ties over time. This photograph presents a cayuse remembered by several names: Dr. Whirlwind, Charlie Saplish, and 𝗙𝗫𝗱 𝗽𝗵𝟗. A member of the Confederated Tribes of the 𝗢𝗎𝗃, he lived on the 𝗢𝗎𝗃 Reservation in Oregon, USA. The record is by Lee Morehouse in the early 20th century, when he was documenting indigenous practices and leaders. In the 1891 photo, we see Mrs. Thunderbear, a Lakota and interpreter among the Sioux in the northern United States. The record comes after the Indian Wars, when federal confinement policies pushed communities onto reservations. In this context, she mediated between tribal leaders and government agents, reshaping political and cultural practices. In the 1880s, a Blackfoot woman in a fur coat and felt hat holds in her arms a child also protected by furs. Both look at the camera. The child's curiosity contrasts with the mother's serenity. Ross Alexander recorded the scene amid changes and cultural assimilation policies in the Plains Territory. In 1900, in 𝗢𝗹𝗱, Idaho, Nettie Morris, a young Nez Perce, poses for the camera. She wears a long dress with embroidery, fringes, and a beaded necklace. Two braids rest on her shoulders. Her gaze is calm. Her story is tied to a people of the Pacific Northwest, heirs of the Plateau culture, then under pressure from assimilation. In 1910, Chief Anatlas Anyalahash, Tlingit leader on the Pacific Northwest coast, was portrayed in a historic photograph with a Chilkat blanket. Woven with mountain goat wool and yellow cedar bark, the piece displays geometric forms and sacred beings. In rituals and dances, it signaled Tlingit prestige and authority. Duncan MacDonald, Flathead leader and historian, poses with his wife Mary Agnes at their home in Ravalli, Montana, around 1901. The portrait by N.A. Forsyth is part of a project to document local indigenous peoples. Son of a Scottish trader and a Flathead woman, MacDonald defended rights and preserved the memory of his people. In 1880, two Apache women pose in front of a 𝗢𝗍𝗱, a shelter of curved branches covered with leaves or hides, erected in the arid Arizona landscape near a spring. The image by Noah H. Rose records indigenous life, labor, and movement under U.S. expansion and the changing control of federal authorities. On the Western Plains in the late 19th century, a white man and a Cheyenne Indian exchange a handshake. The gesture suggests the post-Civil War period. At the time, Cheyenne and Arapaho, allies of the Sioux, lived and resisted the military advance over their lands, which exterminated the buffalo. The contact is fragile, marked by historical tension. In 1916, H.C. Tibbets photographed a young Apache woman in the arid southwest of the United States. On her head, she balances a woven straw olla basket made to store water collected from temporary rivers or wells. The image reveals routines of supply and the female role in the villages during a period of intense ethnography. In 1873, surveyors traveling through the American West relied on a travois, an A-frame drag, to transport instruments and provisions. The scene was recorded by William Henry Jackson, famous for his images of Yellowstone and for joining government geological and geographic expeditions. In studio, As 𝗢𝗱𝗃 Whitehorse of the Pawnee Nation stares into the camera. He was a guide and ally of the U.S. Army in the Plains campaigns. The portrait is from 1870, about 2 years after joining the Hayden expedition to Yellowstone. The author, William Henry Jackson, a Civil War veteran, pioneered photography of the West. 𝗍𝗪, of the Comanche Nation, a Uto Aztecan-speaking people who dominated the southern plains in the 18th and 19th centuries, lived in Oklahoma, then incorporated as Indian Territory after federal removal policies. There, encounters with settlers and the U.S. Army marked his time. He was born in 1911. No record exists of his death. In 1879, 𝗢𝗍𝗱, a young Hopi from 𝗢𝗹𝗱, Arizona, was portrayed by John Hillers, photographer of federal expeditions. In the photo, she sits with her hands in her lap, wearing the attire of her people. In the background, a fabric with geometric patterns. The portrait is part of a series that documented Hopi daily life and architecture in the late 19th century. In 1905, Edward S. Curtis photographed Geronimo, Apache leader and symbol of resistance to United States expansion. He appears serious, wearing a hat and scarf with a rifle in his hands. The image is part of the North American Indian, vast documentation with more than 40,000 photographs dedicated to Native American peoples.